Bueller. Oh my gosh, we're on the air live. Yep, there it is. I see the button that says live. Eric, you see live?
I see live.
All right.
All right. Woo.
Man. Welcome to another episode of Blending the Family, the podcast. Man, I'm having a bad hair day. If you can see this on YouTube, I'm sorry. I did shave. I am your co-host, Tommy Maloney.
And I'm Ann Stelling.
And we have a very special guest on our show today. Before we do that, for those on YouTube, I need to give a shout out to my Chicago Blackhawks. They won. They beat Minnesota last night 4-3, going on to the next round, probably against Anaheim, and it's going to be duck season. Now that we've got that out of the way, very special guest, Erik Lehman, who is also a good friend of mine. We also do another show called Modern Dad Council on Fridays. Check that out also on YouTube. And Erik has a very special passion, a very special quest, a very special endeavor. I like that word, endeavor.
That's a good one.
Erik, before we get into it, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your passion is.
Sure. Well, thank you, and it's a real honor to be on this show. The Modern Dad Council and just kind of the winding relationships that get me to meet great parents like you all has been a real blessing to my life. So I'm just really grateful about that in the beginning. But I'm also the father of three amazing kids. They're 14, they're 12, and they're 10, and two girls and a boy. And they're becoming more and more independent, and I love that. And as they become more independent, I feel it's important to use the fewer moments that I have as a father to impact or impart my values with them, and not necessarily confirm that we share the same values, but really see where my values and theirs align, and see how we can kind of love each other along the way. So, but sort of on the outside of the idea of being a father of these three amazing kids, something happened a few years ago when the Sandy Hook shootings happened in Connecticut. I was just somewhat beside myself. I was sad for about 2 months, and I was really curious as to why this emotion wouldn't leave, and what there was to do. I meditate every day, but for some reason I wasn't allowing the sadness to enter into my meditation. But one day I just kind of did a 180, and I said, well, I'm just going to take all this sadness and what I've been feeling about these kids and just dive into my meditation with that energy. And what showed up was this image of kids carrying nothing but a violent video game as their ticket price into a series of uplifting events that that haven't fully swept the nation yet, but they're starting to sweep Ithaca, New York, where I live. So I had that image during one day's meditation, and then the next day I saw an image of the AIDS quilt, and I said, wow, so if we get these kids to make this change their game, to trade in a violent video game, what are we going to do with them? And online, there were right after Sandy Hook, there were events where people actually burned violent video games, and I thought that was a little extreme, and that wasn't environmentally in the right energy, especially for a project coming out of Ithaca, New York, which just I couldn't see a game burning event being successful here. So when I saw a vision of the AIDS quilt, I said, oh, okay, we can cut these games into pieces, or we can smash them into pieces cathartically, if that's a word, and transform violence into art. So that's what we've been doing. We call it the Game Changer movement, and that's what we've been doing. since probably 11 months after Sandy Hook was our first event. And we launched with an amazing global artist named Lily Ye. She had just returned from Rwanda, where she redesigned the burial site of the genocide with mural and mosaic. So I had met her years before, when she's been spreading the love of planet and life through art, and somehow the planets lined up, and she was able to join me for the launch of the Game Changer movement, and that was probably about a year and a half ago. And we've been transforming violence into art ever since, and now we're actually moving into the idea of making signs for corporate sponsors and supportive organizations out of repurposed violent video games. So I feel like this is a really interesting time for this movement, because the world is globally, and it's hard for us to really admit this with a lot of the things that we're reading or seeing in the news. We're actually entering into one of the most peaceful times, one of the least violent times of history, of recorded history. However, some of the events that happen are actually, they're just hitting closer and closer to home. So it's this very interesting contrast, because on a global scale with 7 billion people, there are fewer, large-scale, deaths or plagues or, other things hitting large numbers of people, except for the fact that the people who are experiencing the violence are getting younger and younger and more visible. So it's a very it's a very pivotal time. So I'm excited that my energy has been launched into this movement in this very interesting way, and it seems like it's novel. Like, not many other organizations are taking this approach. So whenever I share the vision of the Game Changer movement, people are like, cool. And they say cool, and then the next question is like, well, how do you make a living doing that? And that's what we get to answer together. So I'm glad to sort of add visibility to the movement, so that we can figure out where how this gets to grow legs and become sustainable.
Well, since you touched about the Game Changer movement, let's just do this at the beginning here. How can people get a hold of you, Erik, about the Game Changer movement? What social networks can they find you at?
Well, yeah, thank you. Erik at ERIK at dream-catalyst.org is my direct email. Right now, most of the Game Changer movement is being hosted by this other kind of organization I created called Dream Catalyst. And so it's that site is dream-catalyst.org. And I feel like it's just interesting, because I could talk about the Game Changer movement forever. And I guess in sharing more about who I am, and one of the reasons that I've sort of been given all this pay it forward energy, like just wanting to dive into service, is when I was 17, I was in a very interesting family situation, and I wound up experiencing time in a homeless shelter. So my senior year in high school, I spent the first about a month and a half in a homeless shelter before my best friend's folks took me in. And then they wound up putting me through Cornell University. So,
wow.
So I mean, I experienced a whole bunch of miracles, and so a lot of pay it forward came into my system from there. So I think that's the challenge, is like when I share my story or even my vision, and I do it with a smile on my face, people are like, Erik, I'm angry, and it's hard to be angry when that much generosity shows up in your life, you know, and it's hard to do anything from a place of fear when so much love, you know, has been a part of my life for so long, even though with my biological family things were pretty challenging. So so it's a it's a time of great contrast, and it's, I guess what's really interesting is, like, the more we talk about life, everyone realizes that the only thing we can count on is change. And so so that's why I created something called the Game Changer movement. And whenever I create business cards, I call myself a change agent, because the truth is, like, I really understand change, and change doesn't frighten me the way it frightens others. And part of the reason for that is what I just shared, is that, you know, when your world gets rocked, you know, at an early age, and you come out with this, I don't want to call it ending of the story, I want to call it the middle of the story, you just get a different set of lenses to look at the rest of your life. So so yeah, I mean, that's kind of a 25-year recap of this kind of energy.
I find it really inspirational. Most people's solutions to such horrible things, such as the violence on video games, is to go out and destroy them, you know, and we've seen that reaction to many different issues that we've dealt with in society. But rather than do that, you've chosen to make good out of something that's bad. Instead of destroying it, you're reconfiguring it, and you're repurposing it, and you're making it something positive. And that's an amazing concept. I had never even thought of it before. That I'm really inspired by that.
Wow, you know, and it feels so good to just you know, because I don't really feel ownership of this, like, you know, even though the energy is coming through me, you know, I mean, this showed up in a meditation, and the only thing that I'm doing that other people might not have done is listen, you know, and just listen to the whispers and let them amplify and magnify. And every time I take a step with this movement, it just feels right. And you know, we're in the process of creating these rudimentary robots that we're going to deploy across this country, that are, the reason I bring it up is that they're sponsorable. You know, we're figuring out what it costs to make the prototype, and then we're going to figure out what it you know, how we can deploy these robots all over the place. And the main function of these robots is to collect violent video games, you know, at all the locations where they're deployed. And when we get them sponsored enough, there's also going to be, you know, when a youth has the courage to trade in a violent video game, they're gonna make a sound. So hopefully they'll make the sound of a heartbeat, because we call it the Repurpose Your Heart Drive campaign. So
you're saying,
yeah.
let me hold on. So you, like, an R2D2 type robot, you know, is going to be in a community, and kids are going to come up and give this robot their violent video game. Is that what you're saying, Erik?
Well, it's a lower tech R2D2. You know, it's like the first one we made out of galvanized steel, that was new metal, but we may eventually, you know, do a repurposed, you know, metal robot, you know, where we piece together a whole bunch of different pieces of metal that are considered garbage by others. But literally, it's just a hollow container that's going to have a voice box, and not necessarily remote control or anything, but basically it's going to have a hinge and a lock, and so that it's a one-way situation where a kid can trade in a violent video game. And then what we really want for kids to experience is a true trade, you know, where all of my friends who are authors or toy makers or People who run maker spaces all over the country will donate, a week's or a month's membership to a maker space in exchange for the violent video games that the kids are trading in. Because I believe we learned in the 80s that just say no is not enough. We can't just take an addiction. I mean, we're addicted to our screens, and we're addicted to violence. And the other thing that we're addicted to in a good way, but it kind of comes out in a manipulative way in these video games, is we're actually addicted to a feeling of significance. I've been spending some time observing kids playing different spectrums of games, including Grand Theft Auto. But I was watching my friend play college football the other day. My friend's son played college football, and he screams out from the living room. He said, "Daddy, I just caught a 57-yard pass." And it was a very interesting moment, because he internalized, he felt significant, and he felt so significant that he needed to say, "Daddy, I caught a 57-yard pass." And he was talking about a virtual experience that he was having playing college football for the Michigan Wolverines or whatever, So, and that was kind of this interesting moment of, this is where kids are starting to feel significant. And how do we help kids feel significant in non-virtual environments? And that's the challenge that I really want to live into. And that's what brings me back to how I want to be a better dad every day to the 3 kids I get to steward, and then the kids I get to interact with during this movement. So I feel like the maker movement is such a beautiful replacement. I mean, could you imagine, instead of spending countless hours playing violent video games, kids are designing the next wave of toys, or the next different software. I've been working with that my friend's dad, or that child's dad, and we're gonna create different resources for parents that could also be a video game itself. Because I still think, this is the this is the challenge in the world, is that I'm not anti-video game, because there are so many lessons that can be learned in a gamified environment, even as adults. The corporate environment is gamifying, and so for me to say that I'm against games would be totally untrue. So I'm really glad that we have this forum to kind of really clear the playing field, so that people really understand what the ins and outs of the game changer movement really are. But I really appreciate your feeling inspired, because this is going to take on its own energy. And when you hear about it in its purity, you're like, wow, like, I want to live in a world where there's more art than violent video games, and anyone can be a part of that. So that's the fun part when you think about the maker movement, and how easy it might be to join that. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, it's that, and it's living in a world where the answer doesn't also include violence, that it doesn't also include destruction. It includes creation and positivity, and not condemnation, not judgment, but okay, we've got this. What can we do with it to make it better? What can we do to make it more positive? That's the world I want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too, Erik, you bring up a great point, because it's very hard for me when I'm on the phone with my son and he says, I just scored another goal, and it's like, but it's a virtual goal, it's not real. And it's like you're saying earlier, to them, they did that. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who ran down 50 yards, made that incredible catch. But as a dad, it's really hard to embrace it, because it is virtual. It's not real. So along that point, Erik, how can we as parents, kind of, I don't want to say encourage, but how can we take the virtual excitement and put it into the real world, other than, the normal get out of the house, go play.
Well, I don't even know if we need to move past the other than, because I mean that's a big part of it. I mean, the flip side of the game changer movement is actually creating what we call the game changer pledge, and and that pledge is for parents to spend 2 more hours per week with their kids, and so I don't know how far you are from your son when you're hearing this, but you could say, oh wow, well, thank you for telling me about this virtual goal you scored, and maybe the next time we get together, because I know you're in a blended family, we'll get together and you'll have the opportunity to score an actual goal, and I feel like these are the opportunities when my friend's son just said, I caught that 57-yard pass, there was a moment there. There was an opportunity. And my friend could have said, you know what? Let's put that, pause that game. Let's go out and I'll show you what a 57-yard pass feels like to catch or throw. And to much like the Montessori school system, it's a teachable, learnable, lovable, livable moment. And maybe we should trademark or patent that expression. I don't know. Like I'm a an open source kind of guy, but I feel like these are the opportunities that parents get countless times per day to re-engage with their kids, and I love the energy of this conversation, because we can basically take that phone conversation and make a pledge that says the next time we get together, we're going to get on the ice. Yesterday I was just talking with my son, Mason, who's 12. He's in the middle of the 2 girls. And he takes this bike trip every Thursday with his classmates who do this thing called, bike trips. And last Thursday he got into a bike accident where he just had road burn all over his arms and knees. And I'm like, it brought back memories. I'm like, thank God, like the kid's human, like he knows that he has real blood. On the flip side, the sadness is that I was really excited because on Fridays we tend to go out bowling together. And, not that it's a hugely athletic sport, but it's definitely something that we bond over. And there was this big moment of sadness last Friday because he was so scraped up he couldn't bowl. So last night, right before bed, I was just like, hey, Mace, you think you can bowl tomorrow? And he tested his arms out. He's like, yeah, I think I can, and it was a really good, it set the stage for today. And, I don't know if, it's so warm out. It's almost 90 degrees today, so I don't know if we'll make it to a bowling alley with a day this gorgeous. But that being said, just getting our kids engaged in the things that are bonding moments, and sharing love and excitement for those things. There's no way to minimize that. I honestly believe that the first moment a kid wanted to play a violent video game, what they really, really wanted to do was spend time with mom or dad. And we wanted to get some work done. We wanted to get more productive, and we didn't really know what the trade-offs were. We and I'm guilty as charged. Like I wasn't always in this energy. I was a pharmaceutical rep for 6 years of my life, and I came home wearing a suit and tie, and the most enjoyment I got out of that career path was when I got to go out and play poker with the doctors, off work hours, or go running with some of the doctors, or watch some of the other doctors who were in music bands play out on Saturday and Friday and Saturday nights. All those things took time away from the family unit. All the things that gave me enjoyment and had me feel somewhat fulfilled professionally built a bigger and bigger gap between me and my kids and my ex-wife, so, and I don't know if this is this is the time to air that laundry, but who knows?
You, Eric, just remember that we are here for you. We have a virtual couch for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that what I'm excited about in this movement is that the game changer movement is truly changing me, and I'm looking at the old me saying, holy cow. And I'm also saying, well, if change can happen in me, then it can happen in any other dad out there, because there's nothing hugely special about me that makes, me, you know what I mean? Like, as special as I know we all are, we're all just as capable of change as the next person. I might have been, my pump may have been primed, for that, because I've known change at a very early, age. But we're all capable of this, and I feel like that's the important part to know. So, but I'd love to explore other opportunities, but like I don't want us to take ourselves off the hook. I mean, just going out to play with our kids is a huge opportunity, and I feel like those memories we get forever. I mean, you're gonna remember the time where you went from the virtual environment and you said, you know what, let's go find some ice somewhere, and figure out how to, reenact what you just did digitally or virtually in person. And because here's the flip side, I know tremendous people, like tremendous stories where people learned like eye-hand coordination in the virtual environment. So you can't discount the true learning available in the virtual arena. It's just that the the flip side, and this is somewhat research based and somewhat just my internal dad knows this, is that when you spend time in the virtual arena playing a violent video game, you are storing pent up frustration that there's no real world simulation to release. Like you can't go kill 96 out of 100 people in Call of Duty and say, hang up the phone and say, like, Dad, I just killed 96 out of 100, and then like, oh, well, let's just do that in real life. Like you don't want, like you don't want crossover, you know what I mean? So I think that's where we're crossing the line. So so that's why one of the things that I want to see happen is a video game that has just as much an adrenaline rush as Grand Theft Auto, just as enhanced digital environments as Grand Theft Auto, but no killing, and don't need to like beat someone up in order to acquire their car, like I think that's where the line gets crossed, and it doesn't have to, because I think the more and more I look into these games, the thing that is the most addictive, that gets back to that whole significance part. It's just like when a kid can say, Daddy, I caught a 57-yard pass. And we don't want them to say, Daddy, I just killed 96 out of 100 possible kills. Like that's where like we're crossing a line, and because there's so much personal significance ascribed to those moments. And without that conversation, imagine if a kid was playing Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty and didn't have a dad or mom saying, what are you up to, son? Or daughter. I mean, like, this is not just a masculine problem or challenge. I don't like the word problem. It's just, but you know what I mean? So like, I think it's a really important conversation to have, and I think that's the other opportunity is you guys are in a blended family and you care, and there are other parents who consider themselves too busy to even ask the questions that you guys are asking. So, what do we do for those folks? And, these are not the things that keep me up at night, but keep me wanting to be more and more creative, so that we create a vision that loves everyone in this equation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think your timing is perfect. We are kind of at that crossroads where we still have enough of the older generation that didn't have this technology growing up. And so we remember, and I am counting myself in all of that, we remember what it's like to go out and play hide and seek, or have the neighborhood converge in one yard and play kickball, and sometimes having parents involved in that was very cool. To now we have this technology, and one of the unspoken purposes of technology is to remove the human factor. When you no longer even have to talk to a human being to order a sub to be delivered, you're removing the human factor. And so trying to find that balance between keeping the human contact in there, yet utilizing the technology that's coming at us, and there's nothing we're going to do to change that. Technology is here, and it's only going to get bigger and better and whatnot, but it's up to us to determine, are we going to let it be everything to us? And are we going to be, what was that character, Sandra Bullock in Speed, where she lived on her computer and absolutely no human contact? Are we going to get to that point, or are we going to try to balance all of this? And your change gamer stuff is really giving people another perspective, another way of looking at things. Again, going back to we don't need to meet and get rid of the violence with violence. We can repurpose it and we do something different.
Well, and it's been said, an eye for an eye just makes the world blind, and I feel like that's a really big expression in my life, and so this goes kind of to the 100,000-foot view, which is, I don't, fracking is a big deal in my community, but I don't go to anti-fracking rallies. I go to pro-earth gatherings. So I think a sea change is available in our language too, is that we need to be pro-kid, we need to be pro-earth, not even anti-violent video games, and pro-heart.
Even Mother Teresa said, don't invite me to an anti-war rally, invite me to a pro-life, a pro-something happiness rally. Don't invite me to things that have that negative connotation. Invite me to things that are going to be, in your world, Eric, a game changer. Invite me to things and events that is going to create a positive charge, a positive event. So yeah, I mean, again, that was coming from Mother Teresa, who was powerful lady at very short lady.
Sure, and she, she was so inspirational. She mentored one of my new heroes, a woman named Lynn Twist, who wrote this book called The Soul of Money, and she created this kind of framework, and she said, we in the United States, we have 3 opportunities in our lives, and she said, we can make a killing, we can make a dying, or we can make a living. And it just kind of rocked my world when I heard her explanation. She said, people who make a killing have no problem hurting others when they're making their money. So whether that's hurting the earth, in hydrofracking, or designing violent video games that are hurting the heart, or just kind of strip mining the planet, for financial gain. Then there are people who are making a dying, and this is sort of what I was doing when I was a pharmaceutical rep. I was also probably making somewhat of a killing, because I didn't know all of the side effects and all of the the trade-offs, the environmental trade-offs that were happening as I got more and more successful at selling more and more things. But the other way, the way to make it dying is to do something that you weren't born to do, to sell your soul in an increments of an hour for a certain amount of dollars. And then there's a way to make a living, which is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing, is living and making your livelihood, making the money, what you were born to do, and living into your purpose and your calling. And it's time to do that. And my belief, which is why I created this organization called Dream Catalyst, is that the world needs more people to, as parents, to ask kids, what are you going to do? I think the challenge is, there's some evidence that says the more I expose my kids to, the more they're gonna, then they'll be able to figure out their dream. On the flip side, there's also evidence that says if I can give them the space to breathe and to really learn how to meditate, get in touch with the purpose that was born inside of them, they probably know it, and they probably can put it to words by ages 5 to 7. The person who runs my kid's dance studio, she was 5 or 6 when she told her mom, I'm gonna be a dancer and I'm gonna run a dance studio. And thank God her mom said, yes, you are. And right now her mom, works at the dance studio, one of the 2 or 3 dance studios that her daughter created. And so that's what, those are the role models that I want to, dive into when I think of what parenting could look like. And it's not like she needed to go to college in order to do that. She just needed to have mom or dad say, you know what, that's a valid dream and I believe in you. And for some reason, we talk about Common Core and all these other things and helicopter parents, and it's there are a lot of opportunities. The good news is that you and I, all 3 of us, the work that we get to do when we live into our mission and bring parents together, we're not going to run out of work anytime soon. So I feel like that's the good opportunity, and I think the other opportunity is to still go to sleep feeling accomplished, feeling that we did one more thing towards our dream. So I know that there's a lot of schools of thought that said I should have held on to a day job while I was launching this, and the truth is I could have done that. But I didn't, and do I think that the game changer movement is any further along because I didn't have a job or did? I don't know. But I know it feels amazing to be all in, you know what I mean? And it also feels amazing to come home to my kids, whenever I get to get them off the bus, and I think the transition from have to get to is the most amazing transition I think a parent can experience. And if you look forward to breaking up your day of productivity, whatever that means or meant, and say, I get to go pick up my daughter at 2:50 today, and I get an hour with just her before I get to see her brother and sister. And how cool is that? And maybe I don't make as much money, but maybe I do. I think that's the other question. I'm about to start a crowdfunding campaign to grow this movement on a proportion that I don't even know. I won't know exists until I go live with the campaign. But the Game Changer movement can literally create the living that will sustain me and my family for the foreseeable future, and that's what I'm excited about. I want to democratize this because $10 at a time. Our whole framework is that for every $10 donated, we promise to get one violent video game out of the hands of youth. And so our big, hairy, audacious goal is that we want 1 million violent video games turned into art. So if you do the quick math, if people are willing to support this movement and want to support every game in the goal, or every goal in the game, then we've made $10 million to give this a whirl. So it's just quick and easy math, and then I get to be generous and get to see if there's a kid who is inspired to live into their dream, but needs someone like my parents, who took me in, need that kind of energy to hold their hand while they're applying to school, to put them through school. Like, maybe there's going to be a game changer scholarship. Who knows? But I just think it's time to live big into our dreams and see what becomes possible. So I really appreciate this time. I know I can rant for a long time with enough caffeine, but
yes.
Mugga Joe. Yeah.
Mugga Joe. Well, Erik, thank you so much for your time today. Again, to our listeners and the ones also watching on YouTube, give us your information as far as how they can get a hold of you. And you got to let us know when that crowdfunding starts so we can get that message out there as well. So I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, how do we get a hold of you, Erik?
Here's the good news is that this, I hope it eclipses the ice bucket challenge, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask people to donate $10 each, and then challenge 3 parents to do the same, and see how that can go. And we want people to record themselves taking the Game Changer Pledge. So the way to find all of that action will be centrally located on the Dream Catalyst website, which is www.dream-catalyst catalyst.org.
And the other thing I wanted, the biggest takeaway from the time we've spent with you today, Erik, is that extra 2 hours. If we can all as parents somehow, even if you're in a situation where your kids are in another state, if you can just figure out, maybe that 2 hours is a video chat. Maybe that 2 hours is, maybe taking the time for the when I say two of you, you and your kid or kids, maybe that 2 hours is used to write a letter to each other. But take that 2 hours. I mean, that's brilliant, Erik, and and that's something that I'm going to take to heart. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's interesting, because I think 2 hours, I've gotten pushback on that, because other parents are like, I don't know if I have 2 hours in my week to trade in, to spend with my kids. So I know, like, we're gonna be challenged, and here's the flip side, is like the kids that we kind of sold off to the violent video game land, we probably bought for them, so it's not like we're going to say, oh, well, I'm taking this challenge, now we can hang out for 2 hours. Like, it's going to be a process to get our kids back. It's not like they're magically going to be waiting, saying, let's do this now. It might be a process. So, and that's where it's just time for honesty. It might take 7 weeks to get those 2 hours logged in, but if we're committed to it and we take the pledge and we unite, then the world can look a lot different. So thank you for the opportunity to have this more audible and visible.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Erik. Now, for those that want to get hold of us, as always, it's info@blendingthefamily.com. Check us out on Facebook at Blending the Families. I always want to say .com, but it's not .com. It's
at Facebook.
Or as they used to say, the Facebook. And also our website, no W's. It's blendingthefamily.com. I need more coffee myself.
Yeah.
Yes. Erik Lehman, Game Changer, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the inspiration.
Thank you for sharing it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Until next week.
Adios.